I'm Carl Stabe, and today I have Dan Cumberland with me. He focuses on helping people with AI systems for founders who refuse to blend in. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Carl. I've been just totally looking forward to this. Great to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. And we've met in person at Craft and Commerce and in Boise. And it's so good
Yes.
to see you again. I love
Yes.
when we do these things. But I brought you on because you are all in on AI. And I know you have some good systems around AI. And I was like, you have to teach leaders these systems. So I'm
Yes.
I'm, I'm going to jump right in because you talk about human-centered AI systems.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think when I think of that, I think of feedback loops. And then, so
Yes.
when you set this up for a small company, how are
Yeah.
you, capturing what customers care about and not just what
Yes.
the founders think about?
Yeah. That's so good. So good. I mean, there's a couple different directions I want to go with this. Like one is just to kind of zoom in on like what is it when we talk about human-centered AI, what does that mean? And then we can circle back to, customers and founders and those questions. Um, but the place I like to start is to think about our workflows, the things that the process that we use. This is what I love. I love your work because it's all about systems. I thought I was going to be teaching people the tech, but I'm teaching people how to think. That's really what it comes down to.
Yep.
Every
Mhm.
task on our to-do list isn't a task. It's not just a box that we check. It's a process. It's a system. There's a start. There's a series of steps, and then there's an end. We like to think it's common that we think about AI as like kind of being this easy button where you just like smash the button, you get your output, and you're done. What I like to invite people to think about is to really think in systems thinking and in process thinking of like, what is the process that you're using to do whatever that thing is that you do, however you create that value in your company. It's easy for us to talk about marketing, I think, especially when it comes to AI, because like the output's the same for all of us. Like we're all posting on LinkedIn. We know what that looks like, but like a client deliverable could be, a million different things. But like to use the LinkedIn post, as a a process to explore, right? The end state is that LinkedIn post. What's the process to go from staring at a blinking cursor to having that end state? There's ideation, there's refinement, there's editing, there's refinement of the hook, the very beginning, there's refinement of the call to action at the end, there's ideating around imagery and graphics, and there's all these different steps along that process where we can choose which parts of those we want to own as the human in the loop and which parts we want to utilize AI to accelerate or increase the velocity, the quantity, or the quality of what we're doing. And so then instead of this, very flat, two-dimensional checkbox of like write a LinkedIn post, it all of a sudden becomes this three-dimensional thing where there's all these different aspects and all these different places where we can insert AI into the process. So you take that as a template for anything within an organization, and we think about what are the things that you're doing and within your organization, and where are the parts that you want to retain, that human element, that human touch, that human magic, that human meaning that only we can bring, and where can we insert AI along that journey of creating whatever it is that we're creating in order to speed it up, to make it better, and to increase the quality, quantity, velocity. So that's as I think about human in the loop and thinking about those systems that we're building, that's how usually the starting point. And it is very personal. A lot of smaller brands, consultants, solopreneurs, like it's really about them and like what they love. But then as we scale up, it really starts to think about like the values of the company and the culture of the company, what kind of culture that we want to build AI systems around.
Yes. Okay. So coming back to capturing what customers actually care about, how
Yeah.
do you integrate AI into that? Do you
Yeah.
have because I have thoughts on this too, and I think it's just fascinating. I don't I want you to really explore and
Yes.
share what you know.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I've done it differently with different organizations. Depends on the size and scale of the organization. But one of the things that AI is really great at is finding themes and processing large amounts of information. And I'm a big fan of customer interviews. And so one of the ways that we use AI to help refine what a business is doing and the processes that they're running is to do customer interviews and then process those customer interviews with AI to draw out those themes, to find the commonalities and hear the things that people are saying over and over that we just might not miss when we're, conducting the interview and we're having the conversation. We're just in the conversation. We're not necessarily thinking about the last, 5, 10, 15 conversations that we've had. So that's a really important part of the process. And I think any organization that's doing well is, that's you live and die on the voice of your customer and meeting their needs and serving them. So I think it's a really important part of or important way to use AI.
Yeah, and you're right, and I think I want to double click on the concept of using AI to help. Not because I I'm not a big fan of surveys, and I think often
Yeah,
stuff gets lost in translation, but they're very cold. Like if someone's has
yeah,
an interaction with your company and then give this survey, often the people who send that survey to them are like, "Hey, can you give us some good feedback, some good numbers, on
yes,
what you
yes,
think happened?" But I think when you do
yes,
interviews, those walls break down. And when you
yeah,
use AI to record them, basically that transcript, and then you can upload it. I mean, an hour call is just thousands and thousands of words, right?
yes,
And
absolutely.
so that adds up. And it's hard as from a human perspective to like, I have an idea of what I heard, but I didn't
Hmm.
capture everything. Some things stood out to me,
Yes,
some things didn't. But then when you upload that to the AI and ask for, like you said, those themes, those ideas, and
yes,
things open up in a new way where
yes,
just a human aspect doesn't have the same. You miss stuff where the AI
yes.
is much more cold and calculated and focused on finding all these different things and the
Hmm.
interweaving of them. So
Yes,
I find that fascinating. Okay, so
yes,
I think, one of the things when you're creating, concrete systems and metrics to use internally, at your own company, do you have a way to track communication, and make sure nothing gets lost? How do you do that? Do you have a
yeah,
system for that?
yeah. Within my own company.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I use it's not a pretty system, but it works for me. And it's an ever evolving AI driven system, of course, where I have it's all run off of markdown files, like text files, very lightweight documents, where I'm tracking all the initiatives that I'm working on. I have right now my company is just me and then some contractors, so it's a pretty very very lean team. I'm the only full timer right now. Um, and so a lot of it's on my plate, and there's even just to extend the metaphor, a lot of spinning plates, right? And you got to keep them all spinning. So I use AI to help with that process. So it's a lightweight project management system, all driven with AI, and a lot of voice interactions with AI, where I'm talking to AI and saying, okay, here are the things that I need to do. Here's what my priorities are shifting in this way. Help me line up my tasks, line up the communication that needs to go out, line up the marketing, the initiatives that I need to keep working on. That's a big part of it. It's kind of leaning on AI to help manage me, right? Is really
Mm.
really what it is. It's like AI is my project manager right now.
I love that. Yes, because I think too often we try to take on so much, and I'm older. I'm 49, so I'm like I'm used to working a certain way. And you have to
Yes.
rewire that brain to be able to do that. And I think very much to your point, like a quick little thing how I use AI. I take notes at the end of every day, and there's certain
Yeah.
things I touch, and I try to
Hmm.
capture some stories from my
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And I'll use that and I'll upload that. to the AI and I'll say, "Hey, give me 5 different ideas for stories that I can put in my newsletter."
Oh, it's so great. So
And
great.
it's fantastic. It saves me so much time to like kind of
Yes.
think through like, oh, and it gives, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, right? And then I'm
Yes.
like, okay, create a short little story. I prefer like 1 paragraph, sometimes 2, and then it
Hmm.
spits it out. And then I'm like, man, it's like 80, 90% of the way there. And then
Oh,
I do a
so
little
good.
tweaking, and then I put that in my
Yeah.
newsletter. And I'm
I
like,
love it. I love it. Yeah, well, very very similar to that. Because we're just going so many different directions, doing so many things. I have my task list with all the big things that I need to do. Sometimes I get to the end of the day, I'm like, I didn't do anything today. Like, where did my time go? What did I actually do? And so there's something I've been working on, even just to like give like some self gratitude, self acknowledgement, is like really capture all the incidental things that come up along the way. Where a client reached out and needed this or that, so then I had to do that. That never made it onto my to do list. So at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, I have a workflow that I run with this AI project manager. At the beginning of the day, it checks my inboxes, it checks my calendars, it checks my tasks, and then it gives me basically like a summary of the day. And it'll say, hey, you have 4 hours of meetings today, and you have some priorities that need to be shipped tomorrow. This is a problem. What can you move? And you have 35 unread emails in your inbox. So like, kind of primes the pump a little bit and helps me like think more realistically about my time, which is helpful. It's just the way my brain works. I'm very much a time optimist. I think I can do everything in one day. And then I end the day feeling frustrated. So then one of the things that I'm doing is as I go throughout my day, I'll just do a little voice note log into the AI as I go. And then at the end of the day, it runs a log where it looks at everything, all those voice notes, and then it puts them all in a single doc. That's my accomplishments, the things that I did that day. And it's just this running log of all of my tasks throughout the day. And like anybody could do that, right? I love also taking like literal handwritten notes still in a bullet journal. I could write those out, but just something about maybe it's the frictionless nature of being able to just record it as a voice note. Maybe it's also just the fun of like AI, this weird almost human assistant that I have, that just makes it so it's just much more stickier, a habit that I've continued to develop. That's just been really helpful for me. Very similar to what you're doing, like kind of logging the day, thinking about these stories, but really thinking about it from a project management, task management, and like accomplishment, self satisfaction in a day, all in a good day's work standpoint, has been just really fun for me.
I love that. And I think what you're saying is you make that time to look and review, and because you talk about reclaiming 10 hours per week to help founders reclaim 10 hours
Yeah,
per week.
yeah,
And then so around your processes, because you have to identify where these leaks are happening. It
uh-huh,
sounds like you're living what you teach.
yes.
What are those steps that you teach people, and like, how do you map
Yeah.
that out?
Totally, totally. It often starts with a time audit of like where is your time going, and what is the time, the biggest time sucks. And so I work with two demographics: companies that are doing 5 to 50 million. Usually I'm doing custom installs, building tools, or doing team trainings within their organization. For companies doing 5 million and less, typically they're a part of my AI mastery cohort, where so it's for the bigger companies it's done for you. For the smaller companies it's done with you. And the promise of that cohort is, if you go through the cohort, you're gonna be saving at least, we're gonna build something or some things to save you at least 5 hours a week guaranteed, or I will build it for you. So from the very first session that we have, and it takes place over 12 weeks, very first session, like the ante's on, like I gotta figure out where those time leaks are so we can start plugging those. And so I have everybody choose at the very first session, like, what is the first thing that you're going to build. What if the question I like to ask is, if you had a AI magic wand, you could point it at something in your business, what would you point it at first?
Mm,
Because often we have a felt sense, and this is where like we can do an audit, and sometimes we will, where we're like, let's just look at all the time, let's look at all the things that we're doing. But often there are these things where especially in smaller organizations, where we know, like, I don't even care how long that task takes, I just hate it. I just don't want to
Mm,
do it.
mm,
And so there is this little bit of like, are we talking about felt time or are we talking about literal time? And I kind of blur, they often blur together. But for many founders, if there's, if I could save you 15 minutes of your least favorite task, it would feel like an hour, right?
mm,
So there's a little bit of like, where's the friction? Where's the task the task that you don't like? Where is it that you're starting a task and just feeling that sense of dread, of resistance. Oh, I just don't like this. And then like looking at your task list. What are the things that have been on this task list too long? What are the things that are on your task list every single week that we can, maybe take a look at and see how we can speed those up? Because the recurring tasks are the ones that are going to be able to, we're going to be able to build good processes and systems and workflows around. So it's kind of a combination of using a lot of those different lenses to look at people's workflows to figure out where to get the real value out of AI.
mm. I love that. So the key part of that is one, sometimes they know right off the bat. So the system is,
Yeah.
what's leaking now versus like
Mhm.
look at everything. Cause
Yeah.
I've had people, um, I know people who have basically journaled like, okay, I do this, I do that. Sometimes I've heard of people using software to like help
Yeah.
track because they do everything online. Yeah, but you're
Yeah.
right. A lot of times we know like, oh yeah, like I hate sending out this email or I hate doing
Yes.
these
Yes.
follow-up things. These
Yes.
things can be automated now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And just to kind of get, put some kind of flesh on these bones of this conversation. A consultant who went through my program, she does leadership development, leadership training. And there's a couple things that she built, but one of the things, the first kind of real breakthrough with her is that she's always struggled with her marketing messaging. It's just not. I'm a marketer. I kind of love the game a little bit of like, okay, well, how can I poke the box in a different way to make it do something new?
Mhm.
But for her, it's just like, just a drag. And she was working with a copywriter just on a part-time basis who was they were just struggling. Like the output that she was getting from the copywriter, it just felt like AI output,
Mhm.
Um, and she's like, I could do this myself, but like she doesn't want to do it herself because she wants better, and so she would end up just hand rewriting, her newsletter, her social posts, etc. And so then what we decided to do for her was to focus on her brand voice, and that's a big part of something that I often start my engagements with, because regardless if it's marketing or not, we have to understand how to communicate like the brand. So we helped her build an AI, a brand voice training guide. So I build these as text files or markdown files that are trained up on all of her content. So it understands the phrases that she uses, how she turns a phrase, how she opens and closes a newsletter, all of it. And then in her very first time, she plugged this in, dropped this file into her chat GPT. Actually, I think I moved her over to Claude. So dropped into her Claude and said, here's the outline, the structure of this email sequence. It was like a 4 email sequence. Here's what I need it to do. Help me draft it. And just right off the bat, it was like so much better than anything that
Mm.
her copywriter had given her. And she didn't even give like a ton of context. The future sessions, future email sequences, she'll want to infuse a lot of more new material, so she doesn't keep getting a very similar email sequence. But it's just a breakthrough moment for her of like, oh, this tool can do so much more than I thought was possible. Then the next thing we built, one of the things that she really enjoys doing is when people enter her program, she has them take an assessment, and that it's a self-assessment based on their leadership qualities. And at the end of their program, she would have them take those same assessments, and she often would like look at those side by side and then talk with the person about it. But then what she ended up building was an assessment analyzer. So she would drop in that first one, drop in that second one, and then build this report that was really kind of like, a stake in the ground to mark like, look how far you've come in this program, which just drastically increase the value of what she was delivering for her clients, because it's crystallizing what it can be very soft, like leadership abilities and these kind of soft skills, putting it into a report that then she sends out the door at the end of their engagement, to help them note the value and the transformation that's taken place over the course of that engagement. I forget even why I got started on telling you stories, other than like, we can talk about these systems in abstract, but when we talk about saving time and reducing friction, these are the kinds of things that the people in my programs are building. They don't have to be fancy; they just have to deliver value.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's, and everybody's different. And that's why you have to figure out where people want to start and where to
Yeah.
really find that, and I like to say time to value, right? Like how
Yeah.
quickly can you get to value? And I think
Yes.
if you
It's
can do
great.
that quickly, people are like, oh yeah, like this is great. I saved, and
Yes.
it could, like you said, it could be 15 hours a week, but that 15 hours feels so much more heavy and intense. And they can
Hmm.
let that
Hmm.
stuff go. Now,
Yeah.
I will say this also requires thinking like a leader, right? Because back to your
Yes.
point of this woman, like getting this output, and it's like, it's just, it's not at the level that she wants. You then have to oversee it, and you've got to. This is where I think a lot of people falter, is training that AI to get better
Yes.
output. So,
Yes.
what is a system around that? So, okay,
Yeah.
I'm starting to create this system. Maybe it's helping me write my newsletter, whatever it is. Or maybe you have a story of a past client. And then, what is that system for iterating on that
Yeah.
concept?
Yeah. 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 I think there's a couple different things. So first, as far as like how do we train it to stay on brand with the language. I have a guide that teaches you how to do that at AItrainingguide.com. So it teaches my methodology. You can just drop it right into your AI and say, "Hey, I want to set this up," and it'll ask you for a whole bunch of content, or you can just manually fill in the blanks and put it all in there. But let's use
Oh, is
AI.
it you do you use ChatGPT? Is it like a personalized?
Yeah, yeah, you can use it that way. It's written like a guide, for humans, but you can just drop it
Oh,
into
gotcha.
your
Okay,
drop it
gotcha,
into
gotcha.
your
Okay,
AI and let AI guide you through the process.
okay.
So like that is a really good starting point. And I'm a big fan of taking back the controls as much as possible. We really can lean on these these memory, quote unquote, memory functions of ChatGPT and Claude. They all have them now. And they can be a little bit of a crutch. They can be helpful for learning how we do things and what we're about, and et cetera, to increase the quality of the output. But by being more intentional and using systems thinking as we approach these tools, we can really lean in and make the outputs even better. So the place that you start with any project is to think about, like, what is the end state that I'm trying to create. And so even with this training guide that I offer, it has a template. You can use that as a template. Like, we just need to fill out this template. That's what we are trying to create. And then using AI to help synthesize, pull data in from a lot of different sources, is a really helpful part of that process. That's the first part of the question. There was a second part, but it just evaded me, of where of where I was going to go next with that. I totally lost it. But maybe remind me what your question was.
So I think what's important is really understanding how you use AI to how to improve upon AI, right? So
Yeah.
the idea
Yes.
is to have a system that isn't stagnant. I think sometimes
Yes.
systems go stagnant. So then
Hmm.
you're like, oh, it's giving me the same output, but it's because you're not going
Yes.
back and giving it more
Yes.
material to improve.
Exactly.
So what's your
Exactly.
system around? Is it,
Right.
and it could be a monthly thing, it could be a quarterly thing, it could be a
Yeah.
yearly thing.
Yeah.
How do you look at it
Yeah.
and how do you help your clients circle back
Yeah,
around?
that's great. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, it depends client to client. Some clients I'm working with on a longer time period where I'll be doing those updates for them. I'm on retainer or an advisory like role for them. Often, building, around building and maintaining some specific workflows in their business. So then I'm doing that, and paying attention to it for them. But all of these systems that we build, they all run off of instructions. And so what it really looks like is looking at those instructions, and then figuring out, what's not working in this instruction set, this training file. That you have to give it like a very robust prompt, and then how can we refine this to be more on brand for where we are now versus where we were before. And then, like you mentioned, like using AI to help with that process is really helpful. I'm a big fan of, I call it meta prompting, using AI to use AI. Like, let
Mhm.
these tools help you use these tools better.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great point, right? Because you're like, okay, we have this almost genius level IQ person. We can just say, hey, how can I help you improve? Right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how can I help you create better marketing copy? How can I help you create
Yes.
better emails? Whatever it is that
Yep.
you're trying to do, you're saying, hey, just ask it and
Yeah.
and ask it in a particular way. Because if it's too broad,
Exactly.
then
Yes.
it doesn't help. But
Yes.
if you really
Yes.
help focus it, then it can really help
Yes.
improve the systems that
Yeah.
you've created for it.
Yeah. And so then, to go back to your example, like, yeah, that I was trying to do this thing, create this marketing thing, and the way that the language that it used doesn't fit the brand. So then we could just say, why did you use that phrase? I don't use that phrase. Where did that come from? And it might be like, well, you use that in this or that, chat with me, and now it's in my memory. And like, okay, delete that. Or it might be like, in your style guide, it talks about this. Or it might be like, I made that up. And so then you're
Mm,
like, okay, I need to update my style guide. So it says, don't use, I have one client, they have a podcast that's where they talk, what's it called? It's something about the game, but the game is an analogy for the work that they do. I'll keep, some of it a little bit vague, but they use a lot of game terms from board games, not from sports. And so they had a lot of trouble with their AI taking this game analogy and extending it into sports. And like, we're not into sports. And so like, that's one of the
mm.
course corrections we needed to make, is like, okay, we can talk about checkers, we can talk about we can talk about Monopoly, but we're not going to talk about football. And so like, things like that, like asking it, why is it producing the output that it's producing? Try to open up the black box of all the decisions, hundreds of thousands, millions of decisions that are being made behind the scenes, to try to crack that open so you have more visibility on it, so that then you can know which levers and gears to adjust.
That's a great point. I've struggled with this. I've often used the term magnetic systems, but I don't always want to
Yeah.
say this. And it's like, oh, and you just have to use these magnetics. I'm like, no, that's like, it's completely out of context. And it didn't
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sense in that post or in
Yes.
that email. And I was like, oh, and you know what? I didn't even think to say, hey, where are you getting this from? And
Yes.
I know where it's from. It's basically the guide that I created and inputted
Yeah.
into it.
Something that you
But
inputted, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yes.
something I inputted. And I think I'm like, oh, like, but I could just say, hey, can we delete this, or what would work well for you so you stop using it? You're then
Yes.
almost like you're working with it by asking how to help it.
Yeah, totally. Totally. That's exactly right.
Mm.
I think we think of AI as like, it's so funny because we either think of it like a companion. Some people like have like relationships with their AI. They have, I mean, I don't, I guess capital R relationships too, but like they have names, for it, and they're like, my AI knows me so well. And I know when ChatGPT 5 came out, a few months back, like people like had like all these Reddit was all on fire because these people who like felt like they had like intimacy with their AI. All of a sudden, it like the personality changed. What's going on? And so like we think of it, to some degree in that term, in those terms, but then also we often think of it just as like a tool. It's like a calculator. You just type some things in and something comes out. And I find it to be really interesting how we kind of switch back and forth between those modes, but we forget how like we can talk to it about it in order to help it improve in the same way that in one of the analogies I teach people in my programs as they're like kind of laying the foundation of how do we collaborate with AI, like we were talking about, like if we have this workflow, where do we put AI in the workflow? It's going to be very personal. It's going to depend on the person and how they like to do their work, but it's helpful to think about it in terms of another person. Like, so if you had a brilliant Ivy League grad who just finished, just graduated and has a degree in every major, and they just started working for you full time, and they're sitting across the desk from you, waiting for you to give them something to do, how would you help them do the thing that you want them to do well? And that's how we need to approach AI. So we have to give lots of good, robust context, but then to come back to the point at hand here is also we need to tell it, when it's not working, we need to go back to the context that we supplied it and figure out why that didn't work. And so have a conversation with it about like, okay, what would make this work better next time? And then go back to your context, fix the files that you're giving it so that then it'll produce better results.
I love that. Okay, so what is, through your time of working with different companies and these different cohorts, what is one AI system that you think most companies don't get quite right and why? And then what would you
Mm,
do to get it right?
yeah, yeah. I think the thing that I've seen the most is, and I think we've already talked about it a bit, is just leaning on like the AI knows me as like the only way that you can get AI to do the things that you want it to do.
Mm.
And so we've already kind of talked about like really getting intentional with the training documents and context that you're giving it. And not only just for like, things like brand voice, but you layer on, you start with, and this is how I think about all the systems that I built. We start with brand voice. We got to get the tool to write like the brand, but then we layer on top of it specific outputs. So we have the brand voice. Now, what does a newsletter look like? Now, what does a deliverable for a client look like? Now, what does a blog post look like? Okay, now let's talk about blog posts. How do we go from here's an idea for a blog post to an SEO optimized and AI optimized blog post? And there's all these kind of steps along the way. And so like this brand voice piece and training piece, I think is the most fundamental part of any AI system. And it's the place where I feel like there's just a lot of confusion about how to do it well.
I love that. Okay, and is there like this to me, I'm a big proponent of gratitude and appreciation. Is there
Mm-hmm.
one leader in your past that you would like to thank? And what did you learn from them?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, the person that jumps to mind. There's two people that jump to mind. One is our mutual friend Pat Flynn, who was just always been an inspiration from me from like when I first started my entrepreneurial journey. Early on, he had a podcast where people could like submit questions about their business, and I submitted one. I was like on one of the first episodes, and gave me some thoughts about at that point it was starting a podcast. But I've told him this, but I could also say it publicly here. Just like so much gratitude for I think how he leads by example, and for those moments when I was looking for guidance, that was really inspiring to me. And the other person, was much more up close was years ago when I was in grad school. I worked at a pizza shop to pay the bills while I was in grad school, and I had this manager, Marty Penner is his name. And he wasn't from the restaurant world, and I think in some ways maybe he struggled a bit with I don't know, with fitting into the restaurant world. Maybe I'm just making projecting my story onto him here, but he was just so good at with people, and I feel like I learned so much in that role about managing, about leadership, and about working with people. and yeah, and I've told him as well, thanks before, but he's someone also that just comes to mind. Who knew that I would learn so much from working. It was a good pizza shop. It was Ballard Pizza Company in Seattle with Ethan Stoll restaurant. He's like a celebrity chef in Seattle. So we were playing a good game as far as pizza is concerned. But yeah, I just learned a lot watching him being managed by him.
And what was it? Was there a particular story or particular thing that you're like, ah, yeah, I
Yeah.
still think about that, or I still do that, or ask that question, or whatever it is?
There's, I mean, a handful of things. One is how he um, always, welcomed people into the restaurant and created like a
Mm.
welcoming environment. Another is that like I just feel like he listened to me. And I think I've had a lot of managers and leaders in my life who just didn't do that well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
listening is so important. You got to get to
yeah,
know your people. This,
yeah,
for me,
yeah,
this is what systematic leader is all about. You just
mhm,
encompassed it right there, is like really having systems for listening, for gathering feedback, right? Because even if we have contractors, we can still help them better too. We're talking about
yeah,
training AI for most of this podcast, but we have people helping us. And like you said, even if
yeah,
it's a contractor, you can help them get better at what they do. You can give them feedback,
yes,
you can give them
yes,
appreciation, and you
yes,
can share things with them that help them feel a part of the team, even though, yeah, they're
yeah,
contractors and they might only work 10 hours a week or whatever.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
somebody help me with my LinkedIn, and she's fantastic. And I at least try to once a week to, thank her or appreciate her, give her feedback too. Like, hey, we need to work on this. Like, this outreach
yeah,
isn't so good. And there's this back and forth
yeah,
and we're that becomes a relationship builder versus just do the thing and then eventually
yes,
it's, well, it's not working out. And I'm like, well, yeah, because
yes,
you haven't been sharing and listening and
mm, mm,
asking, like, hey, how else can we improve this part of this
yeah,
process? Because
yeah,
they are seeing things, but they just don't think to say it because you're busy. But if you're like,
yes,
hey, how could we improve this process? Oh man, that is one of the best questions that people can ask when working with
mm.
contractors. Like,
Oh, that's so good.
especially for a little while, they're seeing
Yeah, yeah,
patterns. Find out,
yes.
ask them about it.
Yeah, how can we improve the process? I
Yeah,
love that. What a powerful, a simple and powerful question. It's so good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so we still have to do the 5 minute system segment, but where can people
Yeah,
go to find out more about you in this part?
yes. I love it. Yeah. So I already mentioned the AI training guide. Go to aitrainingguide.com. Would love just to offer that as a free resource for people who want to dig into everything that we've been talking about, teaching your AI to do whatever it is that you're trying to get it to do. Um, if you join in there, you'll be added to my email list. I send out helpful tips and with really heartfelt and human lens. It's really kind of I didn't get really deep into my
Mm.
background. I have a background in ministry and psychology and theology before getting into tech a decade ago now, but I do bring that lens to this work, and so I love to write and share thoughts around AI. So you'll be on my email list. You can always hit reply to any of those emails. You can also find me at dancumberlandlabs.com, or just search me up on LinkedIn. I post there regularly as well.
Cool. Thank you so much.